The Courage of Hobbits. Hello my lovelies and happy Tolkien Reading Day to you. This year's topic is hope and courage, and it didn't take me long to pick a topic for my contribution to Tolkien Reading Day. I will talk about the courage of hobbits. Enjoy. Yes, The Lord of the Rings is a story about wars, about heroes, about reluctant kings, about redemption, about good versus evil, and about friendship. And we know all our protagonists quite well. There is the reluctant hero, a very modern version of a hero that does not look like the archetype of a hero, nor does he act as one. He did not ask to go on an adventure, nor is he sure of the outcome. But he does it anyway. Why? Because just like Gandalf tells Frodo, "I wish it need not to have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." Frodo decides to take on the burden of carrying the ring to Mordor, with the most likely outcome of him dying in the process. We have other, maybe more obvious heroes like Legolas and Gimli, excellent warriors that neither fear death nor hardship. They, like Frodo, are willing to accept their fate and the outcome of their quest by knowing their destiny right from the beginning and never really questioning their role in the story, nor do they, at least not that often, sway from their path, even in the worst of times. Then we have obviously Aragorn, another reluctant hero, for other reasons though as Frodo. He is rather a reluctant king. The hero-warrior part he has covered. Aragorn knows his journey and his fate right from the beginning. He and everyone else knows he is the chosen one. The time of kings of men has come again, and Aragorn needs to prove he is worthy. He is in a way the king of the Arthurian legend, destined for greatness. We all know he will become king, but he has to prove it mainly to himself. He's worthy of it, and worthy of pulling out the sword out of the stone, aka having his sword reforged again. In Gandalf we have our prophet, our spiritual and moral guide for the fellowship and humanity in general. He seldomly uses his physical powers, which he clearly does have. He mainly uses them to fight against other magical beings, Balrogs, Witch King, etc. Other examples of heroes we can find in the other hobbits that accompany Frodo on his quest. For one, there's Sam, the actual hero of this story. Feel free to find me on that in the comment section. Sam does not look like a hero, nor does he talk like a hero, but boy, does he become one. Sam's curiosity, happiness, friendship, and positive outlook on life is what got him and Frodo to the slopes of Mount Doom. Frodo never would have made it alone. Frodo knows it, Sam knows it, and so did Gandalf. Till the end, Sam, literally facing the Dark Lord and his army of evil alone, is hopeful and does never lose faith. Different to Frodo, therefore, he is not bound to the ring, even though he did carry it for a while. He willingly gives up the ring. He never went on the journey to carry the ring, to use the ring, or even win the ring for himself. All he wants is to go back to the Shire, to see Rosie again, and probably have a pint in the Green Dragon. Frodo needs Sam to complete his journey. Sam plays, just like all the other protagonists, a pivotal part in the story. And yes, he even becomes a hero in the literal sense of heroes we know of. But what about all the others? The regular people, the small folk, the farmers and smiths and gardeners. Let's see what Gandalf says in The Hobbit. "I have found that it is the small, everyday deed of ordinary folk that kept the darkness at bay. Small acts of kindness and love." What does he mean with it, and who could this refer to in our story? We just talked about all the heroes of the Lord of the Rings, kings and great and not so great warriors. If someone asks you who are the heroes of the Lord of the Rings or even the Hobbit, you have a variety of protagonists to pick from. But aren't we forgetting someone? What about the ordinary folk Gandalf is talking about, the so-called salt of the earth people? People that don't stand on the front line of a battlefield, and whose names are most likely not mentioned in the chronicles. Nobody sings about them in the songs of old, the legendary songs about heroes and warriors. Their names are probably not engraved in the halls built for the heroes. Yet, they are important to our story. Sometimes we do not even know their names or their stories, but they are there in Tolkien's world and most definitely in our world. Behind every great person, there are several others, unmentioned characters, forgotten characters. The same goes for our story. Gandalf is right when he says the ordinary folk kept the darkness at bay. Let's mention some of them and their stories, as I'm not sure all of us remember their deeds or even their names. Obviously, it is not only hobbits Gandalf refers to. They are humans or even unnamed elves. Just think about the courage of the Rohirrim, not the warriors, the farmers, the smith, the regular person. They did their part to keep the evil at bay and to aid the warriors who finally triumph over evil. But I want to talk about the hobbits because I feel it was important to Tolkien that they in particular were the unknown heroes of the Lord of the Rings. As I said, hobbits come not even close to any picture we have in mind of anyone that could win a fight against evil. But what did David versus Goliath teach us? Maybe you do not have to be a giant to win. So we can tick that box, lol. But seriously, let's talk about a few hobbit heroes now. I want to start with Sam's father, Hamfast, or better known as Gaffer Gamgee. At first glance, he looks like the average hobbit, a dutiful gardener with zero interest of the dealings of the world. A Dark Lord tries to enslave the world? How is that of any concern of mine? Elves and dragons? Cabbages and potatoes are better for me and you, he says to Sam. The Gaffer freely admitted he had never been as far as Bucklebury, so how does a simple Shire hobbit, a gardener, play an important role in our story? The Gaffer literally did throw his door in the Nazgul's face and probably left the servant of Sauron a bit, speechless. Welcome to the Shire, Camul, I guess. Before we get to the encounter with Camul, let me say this. I always loved how much Sam refers to his family and especially to his father during the quest. He did learn a lot of useful things from the Gaffer that actually would come in handy. And although Sam differs in worldviews from his father, I think, and you should think about, where did he get his curiosity and his knowledge from? Sam believes in the tales of old. He believes there were dragons once. He believes his cousin saw a walking tree. He is curious about the elves and curious about the world in general. Yes, he could have gotten this information from books, for example, but actually I do not think so. I do think he was told the stories of old by his parents and he grew up learning there is more out there than just the Shire. So yes, the Gaffer himself must believe in those stories as well. He just did choose not to give these stories any importance in his daily life. But I do think Sam partly got his curiosity and knowledge from his father. And I can't help but feel Sam's indestructible optimism is partly inherited and roots in his father's teachings and upbringing. Sam, after all, is one of the main characters that just wants to go back to the Shire and live a happy and fulfilled life, just as the Gaffer would have wanted him to. Most of our other heroes could never. They were scarred by their experience and by what they saw, and life never was the same again. In a way, Sam lived both lives and escaped his lower class fate as the gardener to an upper class hobbit, living out his days in blissful boringness like his father chose to. But in a way, he also ended up doing exactly that, living a fulfilled but peaceful life in the Shire, whilst being one of the greatest heroes of all time. Sam experienced both and he knew how to process what he saw. So he was actually one of the only ones that did profit in a way from the whole journey. It is hard to explain, but for me he combines a hero and an ordinary hobbit in the best way possible, whilst living a fulfilled and happy life. Most of the other heroes could never do that and actually had to leave Middle-earth because they never could find their peace and their place again after what they experienced. In a way, I do think Sam is Tolkien. after coming back from the war. He came back and lived. Coming back to Sam's father, for me the Gaffer is way more than just an average hobbit from the Shire, and the upbringing of his son proves that for me. Back to his moment. On the evening of the 23rd of September, the Nazgul entered the Shire, looking for Frodo, who already was on the run, aided by Sam and Fredegar and others. Frodo heard the Gaffer talking to a stranger, and let me read directly from the book, because this passage actually does not only show the courage of the hobbits, but is also hilarious and made me love the Gaffer even more. So, no, Mr. Baggins has gone away. Went this morning, and my Sam went with him. Anyway, all his stuff went. Yes, sold out and gone, I tell ye. Why? Why is none of my business, or yours? Where to? That ain't no secret. He's moved to Bucklebury or some such place, away down yonder. Yes, it is a tidy way. I've never been so far myself. They're queer folks in Buckland. No, I can give no message. Good night to you. So the Gaffer not only wasn't really afraid of a creepy undead rider, probably twice his size, like a true Shire hobbit, he refused to give Frodo a message, and he kind of threw the door in the Nazgul's face, as the text implies. The hobbits really did not like or trust strangers. To be fair, the Gaffer was almost blind and probably did not fully realize what was in front of him. But remember how others reacted to the Nazgul, full of fear, sensing the literal evil in front of them. Meanwhile, the Gaffer was simply not impressed. Let's talk about another Shire hobbit who played his part in aiding the Fellowship, Fredegar Bolger, aka Fatty Bolger. I mean, the name he was given alone should say it all. Fatty Bolger does not sound like our typical hero, does he? But a hero he was. Fatty right from the get-go was involved in the conspiracy of Frodo leaving the Shire. He started off with simply helping packing Frodo's belongings and was more interested in the delicious mushrooms at first. But when it counted, Fredegar was there. I think Tolkien wrote that role deliberately to, again, prove the courage of the hobbits, not always visible at first glance. At first glance, they wanted a peaceful life and focus on food and more food, as well as parties and the good life in general. Who can blame them? Maybe even at a second glance, there wasn't much courage shown, but Fatty's hour came when he helped to chase the Nazgul away. And I feel Fatty in general stands for many inhabitants of the Shire, or the small folk in general. Why are the deeds of the world of any importance to somebody living tucked away in a part of the world no one, especially a Dark Lord, has ever heard of? I can understand Fredegar's decision not to go with Frodo and the others. But as soon as he knew evil finally did come to his part of the world, he was there and played his part. I feel this stands for many of us, or for all humanity. We do not all have to be brave soldiers on the forefront of war. We can play our part with the courage and the power and strength we have in us. Not everyone has to be an Aragorn or a Gimli, but we all sometimes can be a hero. Heroes come in many forms, and in The Lord of the Ring, they are often the small folk and the unlikely heroes. Let's read what Fatty actually did. Fatty Bolger had not been idle. As soon as he saw the dark shapes creep from the garden, he knew that he must run for it or perish. And run he did, out of the back door, through the garden and over the fields. When he reached the nearest house, more than a mile away, he collapsed on the doorstep. "No, no, no," he was crying. "Not me! I haven't got it!" It was some time before anyone could make out what he was babbling about. At least they got the idea that enemies were in Buckland, some strange invasion from the old forest. And then they lost no more time. Fear! Fire! Foes! The brandybucks were blowing the horn call of Buckland that had not been sounded for hundreds of years. Not since the white wolves came in the fell winter, when the brandywine was frozen over. Awake! Awake! Far away answering horns were heard. The black figures fled from the house. One of them let fall a hobbit cloak on the step as he ran. In the lane, the noise of hoofs broke out and went hammering away into the darkness. All about Craig Hollow there was the sound of horns blowing and voices crying. But the Black Riders rode like a gale to the north gate. Let the little people blow. Sauron would deal with them later. Meanwhile, they had another errand. They knew now that the house was empty and the ring had gone. They rode down the guards at the gate and vanished from the Shire. So he, aka the Brandy Box, alarmed the Shire and drove the Nazgul away and gave Frodo more time. Thumbs up for the bravery of Fredegar, I'd say. Now let's talk about our third unlikely hero, a farmer. And again, you might say, what can a farmer do to help fight evil? Well, he was not just any farmer. Our farmer in question was actually friends with Tom Bombadil. And that alone should tell us he's not just any hobbit. Tom is an out-of-place character that has his own story, but let me say this, he's a bit like Gandalf and only seeks out special people he interacts with. Still, we do not know of any special powers Farmer Maggot had, or that he was ever involved in a real adventure like, let's say, Bilbo was. Still, like the Gaffer and like Fatty, he had his role to play and he helped the hobbits escape once again. What happened? On the 25th of September, Maggot also was approached by a Black Rider who asked him if he had seen a Baggins. That's all the information the Nazgul really had on Frodo, as literally no one from the Shire was willing to give them anything to work with. Maggot then lied to the Rider and told him to go to Hobbiton. The Rider, who just came from Hobbiton, knew Frodo had left Hobbiton a while ago and offered to reward Maggot in gold for information about the Hobbits' whereabouts. As a reply, Maggot threatened the Nazgul with his dogs named Grip, Fang, and Wolf, and the Rider left in haste again with zero information. Who can blame him? The names of those dogs frighten me. But joking aside, just as our two other characters and probably many other hobbits and small folks, Farmer Maggot stands for what is good in this world. Honest people who know good from evil and are willing to play their part. So in Tolkien's world, just like in our world, you can be a hero without being a front row warrior. And I mean, who destroyed the ring in the end? Hobbits and Gollum. Well, with a bit of good and fate interfering, but you know. The hobbits and their courage should tell us one thing. We all can be heroes, and just like I told you in the beginning, every small deed counts. One little side note to the courage of hobbits, not many might know, as I did portray them as not the typical warrior in this video. Before the Third Age, hobbits of the Shire were subjects of the kings of Arthedain and Fornost, and were responsible for guarding and maintaining the Brandywine Bridge for the kingdom. In the year 1974 of the Second Age, Fornost was overrun by the Witch King of Angmar and his forces. During the Northern Wars, the hobbits allegedly did send archers to Fornost and fought against the Witch King. So, the encounter of hobbits and Nazgul might not have been their first encounter in our story here. And here I actually want to end my video on this year's Tolkien Reading Day about courage and hope. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. Till the next one, bye bye my lovelies.